Spooky-Loo WrestleRoni number 90. Biggest one yet. Legend in the house. As West Virginia as it gets. Jason the Gift Kincaid. How we doing, my man?
Greetings, Spooky Lou. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you've noticed, but I am very grateful to be here and I'm feeling great. How are you?
Man, I'm stoked. Now, see, I was going to do that as the opening, but part of me was hoping you would say that. That takes me back, man. I go back. I know the Jason Kincaid coming out with the leather jacket, the long braids, the cocky son of a gun. Now, a lot of folks know, but might not know today. I've been watching you for a minute. Since episode 1, this has been a mission to get you on here. Appreciate you coming on. What's going on in Jason Kincaid's world right now?
Oh, man, I'm as happy and as healthy as I've been in a long time, which is really good because I've been struggling with health issues for years and years. You know, I've been wrestling for 20 years now, so I'm beat up, but also I've been giving myself a bit more time to heal between all the crazy stuff that I do. So on that end, I'm doing very good.
I can tell you're knocking it out of the park. Every match, just banger after banger. I tell you what, since we're talking about that, most recently, Saturday Night Shoot Masters, PWL, Jason Kincaid, Ace Austin. What a fun match. Props to Sleazy Breeze for his contributions in that match as well. What can you tell the folks about that match and PWL in general?
Yeah, so that was a really cool opportunity because I got to wrestle Ace Austin years ago before everybody else knew how good he was. But I watched the Dayton, Ohio indie wrestling scene because we're pretty close over here. And so I knew going into that match even back then how good he was. And he was doing Fosbury flop dives on the ladders in the match that we had. So it was cool not only to get to work with him again, but after all these years and all this experience, seeing how far he's come, even from being that good back then.
Yeah, and what a fun match. Thank you for awesome content for the channel. What a fun match. And you talk about how far people's come in full circle, man. I've watched you for years around here on the indies, and first thing that pops in my mind after watching you on the indies for years, I'm watching Ring of Honor one day, and Jason the Gift Kincaid's on Ring of Honor. What can you tell me about that experience?
So when me and my buddy Joe Evans first started talking about going to training school as a young wrestler, we were Ring of Honor stands. And this is super early days of Ring of Honor, the first few shows. And we were on torrent sites watching them. Sorry, Gabe. So it took me, I don't know, 13, 14 years to get there from when I started being a lowly West Virginia indie wrestler for so many years. And so to me, that was the coolest part is the journey to get there. And that was the main place that I wanted to wrestle in the United States when I first started. And then the first match I had in Ring of Honor was against Leo Rush, and it's still one of my best matches because 5 minutes of just pure action and doing what I've kind of become known as now is the guy that does shit that you've never seen before, doing stuff that people have never seen before on ROH TV with Kevin Kelly and Nigel McGuinness making the calls for it. It was sick.
Oh man, I know. I can only imagine how much it meant to you because, I mean, dude, me watching it, I almost teared up. I got the goosebumps seeing you on there, so that was a moment for me, and I was sitting at home watching it on TV, and of course it was pre-taped. I didn't even know it happened, so good stuff, man. Just good stuff.
And it was really rad too because the first one I did was in Concord, North Carolina, and it's right outside of Charlotte, so that's about 3.5 hours from here. And fans from West Virginia drove down specifically to watch me, and we're sitting in the front row. So it was also good to be making my debut, but I'm not in my home state, but there are people still there to support me. that was really rad.
Hell yeah. You are the pride of West Virginia when it comes to wrestling, in my book. Yeah, we have our Heath Slaters and our Jamie Nobles, but you're still out here killing it, still making a name. You've been on the scene, man. What can you tell me as far as good changes, bad changes? What have you seen happen in the West Virginia scene in the past 20 years?
So almost exclusively good changes. Uh, like it was wild and wonderful West Virginia all the way back. I like to always say that I'm aggressively West Virginian,
Mm-hmm.
and it really was like the Wild West when I started. So I see way less fist fights in the locker room than I used to. Like to some people that can be a good thing or a bad thing because there are plenty of people that might maybe like get a little bit too comfortable stepping out of line,
Right.
and maybe like a good fist fight, like as long as both are consenting adults, I'm not against it. But like there used to be fights in the locker room basically every show.
Wow.
And like yeah, it's just way wilder. Like so many stories that like if those guys were still around, like so many like ways to cancel them on Twitter. And uh you see a lot less of that. And also like indie wrestling has gotten so much better in general since I started. Because I started in 2003, and one of the things about that was is like, for one, if you were studying a lot of wrestling, it's because you were a tape trader or
Yep.
you were on those torrent sites all the time. Uh, as opposed to now, where like you can watch 3-hour seminars with guys that were on WWE TV for 10 years for free on YouTube, and you can pull up World of Sport matches from 1970 and watch 1960s French wrestling and all Japan, and like with zero work put into it. And some people will say that that makes the kids spoiled, but like it just makes wrestling better because the education is free. That like I had to struggle to like I'm in JV Insanity's apartment like combing through tape after tape after tape trying to find like some Japanese wrestling so I can wrestle like a Japanese wrestler, as opposed to now it's easier, but it also like if you can get that skill level easy, you can build on it easy too. And so the wrestlers are just way better now than they used to be, which I know is a controversial thing to say because I'm supposed to be an old dude that yells at clouds and say that wrestling is always better previously, but those people are wrong and I'm correct.
I agree. I agree. To your point, I always argue this is the greatest era because wrestling's more accessible than it ever was. I mean, you can check out RSW if you're in France. I can watch a France indie fed in West Virginia.
Fed in West Virginia.
1000%. And another thing too is like when I started, WWE wasn't signing indie guys or indie women, and so a lot of people they were just in it for the love of like independent wrestling, which is cool in its own way. But because guys like CM Punk and Bryan Danielson got signed, it gave everybody on the scene not just got signed, but got signed and pushed. It gave everybody on the scene hope that they didn't have before, and I saw everybody start to try harder. And more people you see independent wrestling as a route to the WWE, and so you get a lot of people that are like really trying to hustle and get after like being excellent at professional wrestling so they can get to that highest level.
No doubt. No,
No
doubt.
doubt. No doubt.
How about.
How about
I'm sorry, I'm getting
I'm
crazy
sorry.
feedback on my end. But anyway, there it went away. Cool. God fixed it. Who's some of the folks you've seen try their heart out and succeed? And what about some people now on the scene, the people that's busting their ass to get to that next level?
Yeah, so guys like Ace Austin and like I'll specifically go back to Leo Rush because I just talked about him for the Ring of Honor match,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew Leo like when he was a trainee because like he was such a hyper focused on success kind of guy that I remember like when he had just had a few matches at this point, uh, he sent me a message and was like, I hope I get to wrestle you one day. And I just know that, like, I kind of, even back then, like, I was that guy in the area that people did want to work with because, like, I do the cool, out of, like, wild, like, super indie wrestling style when a lot of people don't. But I also know if he was messaging me that, he was messaging all kinds of people that. And that's kind of the focus that he had, like, the laser focus from the beginning. And I remember, you know, he was doing ROH TV still, and he went to a WWE tryout at Evolve when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people will like put all their eggs in one basket or rest on their laurels, and like you see a lot of people, and I was in that same category where you feel like it should be like a hip hop story or something. Like I'm just rapping on the corner, and like a record executive walks by, and it's like, "Hey, you want to get in the studio?"
Right.
But it's not like that. Like for the most part, like almost everybody has to hustle to get those opportunities to get to the next level. And I've seen a lot of people like that were as talented as me or even more talented kind of drift away from pro wrestling because they kind of stagnated and expected opportunities to come that never came because they weren't really like going for the things that they wanted. Like one of my favorite wrestlers that I used to wrestle with back in the day, his name was Chris King.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of the disappointing things about getting to Ring of Honor is like I wish we would have got there together because that was my dude. Like we were having like ROH level matches for 20 people in Union, West Virginia, in the middle of nowhere. And it would have been so sick, not just to get there, but to get there with the people that I was around.
I got you. And that brings up a good point. Our area isn't, in my opinion at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a whole lot of guys from our area getting opportunities. We don't have much of a name. So, where was I going with that? Where, as far as West Virginia goes, do you think we are treated fairly? Have you seen guys make it? As far as the West Virginia scene, do you think we have a fair shake?
I think we have a fair shake in that everybody has a fair shake in pro wrestling. But also, like, you have to be realistic about West Virginia indie wrestling. We're a small state, a poor state. So the indie scene itself is only ever going to grow so big, especially if we're just concentrating on the West Virginia indie scene. Like, I feel like one of the things that's missing currently, like, Pro Wrestling Conquest, I feel like they bring in a lot of super indie names, and that gets, like, people from out of state coming in. You have promotions like RSW that do have a good online presence, but you don't have anything like many years ago, Madman Pondo was the matchmaker for IWA East Coast, and it was a cool super indie out of West Virginia that people online followed. And I don't feel like we have that now. We have a bunch of different cool promotions, like ASW is awesome, like Power Slam Academy is running really cool shows, student showcase shows. But we don't have that like super indie online, like people want to travel from other states to come see these shows type shows as much.
Yep.
And I would like to see that.
Yep, I totally get it. I was talking to a promoter around here, and he said, you know, I could book these big indie names, but who around here knows these indie names? Who's going to buy a ticket to see that indie name? And I get it. I totally understand.
Like High Spots TV and all these other streaming services. I feel like there should be more West Virginia wrestling representation on the streaming services. IWTV is like one of the biggest ones.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those super indie fans go to wrestling for, and there's no representation.
Exactly.
Besides the old IWA East Coast shows where like Man, that commentary doesn't hold up over time. Like some cancelable stuff in there.
Oh, you constantly. Yep, exactly. And
It was a different time, I promise.
oh yeah, I was there. Believe me, I was in the crowd chanting the fucked up stuff. Believe me. So yeah, if there's footage of me in the crowd, I'm canceled. So I get it.
Right.
And to what you were saying, and that's true. And there's new streaming services starting. You got the new Premiere. I just saw there's a new one called Remix that's working with Enjoy. So from my point of view, I really don't think it's not Remix and Premiere and IWTV. I think if somebody give them the footage, they'd take it. So that to these promoters, let's get some production going. Let's film it and see if IWTV wants it. See if Fight wants it. I really think a lot of this lies on the promoters and getting that footage out there. That's me.
100%. And like another thing about being in West Virginia, it's like it's good as far as driving goes because we're centrally located in the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a 7-hour drive up to Toronto, for example, and I can be in a whole different country. Or like it's easy to get down to Charlotte at 3.5 hours, or like get out to the Midwest and like the Louisville scene easily. But like there's no major airports because I'm also going to have to drive to Charlotte if I'm going to fly internationally, which I've had to do a bunch of times. And so it can be hard for somebody from our area to get out there because like you either have to do the drives because they're centrally located, or like if you get to the level like of a me or a Chance Prophet, who's another guy like he's went about as far as like any other independent wrestler from West Virginia like me that stayed here and stayed independent, where like we get flown places occasionally and like it's just not convenient for promoters to do it.
Right on.
But like the names that you talked about, like Heath and Jamie Noble, they started in West Virginia. Well, Jamie especially actually started on the indie scene in West Virginia, but he was smart enough to move, and he moved south and got trained by the Malinkos on top of his training he already had, and went to the WCW power plant. And Heath went straight to the WCW power plant, or WW4A, whatever it was at that point. And they stayed out of West Virginia until, after they got signed and maybe came home.
Okay. Now, good point. Good point. And like you say, we still have our legends like yourself, Chance Prophet, Violent Vance Desmond, for goodness sakes. We've got names around here, believe me. That's something I've brought up in prior podcasts. I always went to indie shows, and it seemed about the time Ring of Honor came out, then you had guys like, well, go back on my story here. When I was going to these indie shows in the late 90s or so, you had the old school Memphis style wrestling. Your chin locks, your strikes, and all that good stuff. Ring of Honor, TNA hits the scene. Then we get our Jason Kincaids, our Violent Vance Desmonds, and that X Division style. And in my eyes, at least, I didn't see that type of wrestling live here in West Virginia until about 2002. And you were right there seeing it happen. What kind of backlash did that get in the locker room? Were people for it? Were people against it? How did people here locally look at that kind of style?
I mean, always against it, of course, because every generation hates the next generation's music, movies, whatever it is. It's just a cycle of life. Quick side note, my cat's here with me.
Kitty.
And, but the thing about that is like, I also learned that style and learned how to do it really well, so they couldn't tell me shit. Like, I would, on top of like going through JV's tapes and watching IWA Mid-South and Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling, I was also watching Dory Funk Jr. versus Jack Briscoe over and over and over again. I was watching Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man Randy Savage over and over again. So I could adapt to where I could work with those older guys and do their style, but also like get my little cool shit in, to where like I feel like that's a good mix for me because I do have that base of old school wrestling, and I could also be the rebellious youth that I was and be like, they don't know shit. I I was, 1 year into the business talking shit like every other kid.
You're such a contrast, man. You are, because like you said, you've got that X Division style, but at the same time, you can get down and get technical, do the submissions. You're the most humble, cocky person I've ever met, I think, and that's a compliment. I promise. I'm not downing you. You found the
No,
right balance.
I take it as a compliment because that's what I always tell people is like every wrestler should have that kind of quiet confidence. And this is something I always say at my seminars, and like I feel like a lot of young wrestlers need to hear it. You should be your own favorite wrestler. And that doesn't mean mark out for yourself and jack off in front of the mirror or anything. What I mean is like you should only be doing the type of wrestling that you like and be doing the shit out of it. And so your matches should be your favorite matches because you're only doing the shit that you enjoy.
There you go. And you're living proof, man. You had mentioned earlier about the international. You've made it internationally and everything. Take me back to the first time you find out you're going out there internationally. What goes through your mind? What was the trip like? Where'd you go? How'd that go for you?
Yeah, so the first time I left internationally, it was kind of just by happenstance because a local West Virginia wrestler, Death Falcon Zero, I don't know if you ever saw him back in the day or not,
I'm not sure.
but like him and his buddy would do like independent movies, and they went down and did a movie in Arizona, and it was like one of those lucha libre exploitation films,
Nice.
and they met real luchadors when they were down there, and those guys said, hey, come down here, we'll get you booked in Sonora. And so they went down the first time, and then they were going down the second time, and I'm sitting back and watching like, man, I'm way better than all these motherfuckers that are going down there. I should be going down there. Just like every other wrestler, right?
Right.
And me and my buddies were in Tennessee. Like I remember, we got drunk as hell the night before, and we were staying at a hotel. And I woke up with a hangover, and like one of the wrestlers that I never really talked to a lot called me, and he was like, "Hey, spot opened up in the car for the little mini Mexico tour that Death Falcon Zero is doing. You want to come down?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hell yeah, I want to go down to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And this was not an international flight trip. This was driving. It's like, man, I don't even know off the top of my head, like 37 hours in the car.
Wow.
Drive down to like the state of Sonora, which is like the state right below Arizona.
Okay.
And I remember when we got in the car, it was me, Death Falcon Zero, Shane Storm, and the Jugulator.
Okay.
And the dude had a fuse out, and this is like, not everybody had, like, I've been going international so long that not everybody had GPS on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, he had an old, like, Jugulator had an old school GPS, and he was like, yeah, we just need to plug it in. And the guy was like, my charger thing doesn't work.
Oh.
And so we've got printed out MapQuest directions to drive to Mexico. And then somewhere in Missouri, we missed one of our stops because we weren't looking at our papers. And looking at road signs, we were telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
And we got like, probably like, we added an extra, if it was 36 hours down there, it was 38 now. And the next day, Jugulator's like, this is just bullshit. And pulls into Walmart and like buys a fuse and puts it in the guy's car. And then the GPS is on. It was that easy. Like we should have done it a day before. We never would have lost that time.
I've been there.
And
I've been there. Me and Billy Knox a couple months ago, PWL. It was only a half hour out of the way, but like you said, telling stories, not paying attention, missed the exit. It definitely wasn't an extra couple hours heading to Mexico, but still we.
And we were in Missouri too, and like it was one of those places where we kept passing gas stations that were closed after that,
Mm-hmm.
and we were like, "Fuck, we're probably gonna have to lose even more time." because we're going to get so low on gas that we're going to have to park at a gas station, wait for them to open up, so they'll turn the pumps on for us. But we did eventually make it to a gas station, and we stayed with a dude in Arizona on that trip, and I hadn't smoked weed in probably, I don't know, a decade at that point, since I was like in high school.
Oh, okay.
And I smoked some like medical level marijuana,
Mm-hmm.
and I got so fucked up at this dude's house, and I broke one of his. He had like a collection of like really cool like Mexican style art statues, and I broke one of them,
Oh no.
and so like I'm like already off to a bad start, but he didn't give a fuck, so it was okay.
Oh, okay. Damn.
And
That's.
when we were in Mexico, like when we finally got down there,
Mhm.
I'm such like a wrestling nerd that I wanted to learn all the lucha libre moves in Spanish. And so the guy that we were staying with down there, he speaks perfect English because he teaches English down there.
Mhm.
And I was just following him around with a notepad, like, hey, what do you call this? What do you call that? And he's like, fuck, dude, you need to like calm down and just like don't worry about it and just go wrestle because you're driving me insane. But
I
what
guess.
I didn't ask was the actual rules of those 6-man tags down there. Because in those trios matches, I didn't know this beforehand, but they're 2 out of 3 falls, which I knew. But to get one fall, you have to pin or submit 2 of the teammates or the captain.
Oh, I'll be damned. I didn't
And
know that.
yeah, so the first night that we're there, the guys that were wrestling were in a locker room with like no bathroom, so there's just a piss bucket in the bathroom or in the locker room.
Uh.
And these guys come in like a party. They're slapping hands, running around, like chugging beers. One guy just like drops trowel, takes a piss in the bucket right beside me. And his buddy slaps him on the ass and then shoots him in the ass with something. I don't know what it was, but I'm like, I fucking love Mexico, bro. This is my home now. But then we're wrestling those guys in the ring, and I put one of them in a hold, and he taps out. I'm like, okay, cool, that's one fall. And then his partner comes in, and we're wrestling around, and I put that guy in a hold, and he taps out. And I look at my tag partners, and I'm like, did we just win? It's been like 4 minutes,
Okay.
but the match just kept going. And so finally in the locker room, we figured it out that yeah, we didn't know the rules. We had driven 36 hours to compete in a match that we didn't understand how it works.
That's why I love my job so much, because I have watched CMLL, AAA, Crash, little rinky-dink feds. Of course, the commentary's in Spanish, and I've watched for years. And I'm like, well, okay, I've never, and now it makes sense. Like after all these years, me thinking I knew my shit, Jason Kincaid just taught me the fucking rules finally to Lucha Libre. Thank you for that, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. And another thing that will make sense because of that is like you see it all the time in lucha matches. They'll do like double sunset flips
Hmm?
where like 2 wrestlers are getting pinned at the same time, and
Yeah.
that way you get both the falls at the same time.
No doubt. Wow. Okay. Hey, I guarantee you some people learned from that, because, like I say, I've watched for years, and I'm like, well, this is this, and okay. After all this time, we can shut the podcast down now. That's perfect shit. That
Also,
cool.
when I was down there, like this is when I still had my braids,
Hmm.
and like the guy started like the main guy that we were staying with, he wrestles as Aztec, and
Okay.
he started calling me Vikingo
Oh shit.
because of my look, and I like cool Viking. That's pretty cool actually. And so when I came back, like I started doing the shoulder pads and stuff because I was trying to look like a Viking, because so it kind of like shaped my career as well.
I'll be. Okay. Yeah, and I remember when you first started wearing those and stuff and started switching up the look. So there, we're learning here, listeners. Good stuff. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You've been to DDT in Japan as well, right?
Correct, yeah.
What can you tell me about the DDT experience? Because it looks like they get pretty wild over there.
Yeah, so when I started in wrestling, I wanted to wrestle in Japan more than anything else. Like, I didn't want to go to WWE. I didn't want to be like a corporate, like superstar kind of wrestler. Like,
Mm-hmm.
my shit was indie wrestling and Japanese wrestling.
Hell yeah.
And like, I'd already made it to Ring of Honor, and like, I've been like, this. I went to DDT, I think in 2018 was the first time. And so I'd been wrestling since 2003. So like been doing it a long time before I actually made it to Japan. And people always ask me like, how do you get over there? And for me, and this is what I tell people in my seminars, like I've kind of like shaped myself as a wrestler to where I'm the kind of wrestler that if somebody brings an international wrestler to the show, they're going to put them with me.
Okay.
Because I already do lucha libre. I already do like Japanese style wrestling within the within all like the weird like super indie stuff that I do. So for me, like I did a show, Glory Pro, out in Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
and Shigehiro Irie was one of the wrestlers that I wrestled in like a scramble match, and through that match, like he discovered me and then like deep dived me, but like I didn't know anything about that. And a year later, one of the matchmakers for DDT messaged me on Twitter and was like, "Hey, Shigehiro Irie's winning the DDT title, and they're giving him his own group, and he wants you in it. Do you have any interest in going to Japan?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I want to go to Japan."
No shit.
But like anybody that's been in indie wrestling for as long as I have, I didn't even tell anybody that I was going to Japan
Right.
because like I was afraid it wasn't going to happen, because that shit happens all the time too in indie wrestling. All these opportunities seem like they're on the cusp of happening. So like with that first tour too, like it was down to the wire to get my passport in time, to the point where like the embassy, the Japanese embassy where you've got to get your visa
Mm-hmm.
for West Virginia, is in New York City. And I it got down to the wire so much that I sent it up to them in the mail, and I already paid for them to like express ship it back. But like I was looking at it, and like even with express shipping that's supposed to be one day, they said sometimes it takes 2 days. And if it would have been 2 days, like I wouldn't have been able to get on my flight.
Oh wow.
So I drove all the way up to the embassy, like the Japanese embassy in New York City, to get my passport, only to drive straight home, pack my bag, and then drive to Charlotte to get on the flight.
Hell
It
yeah.
was that stressful, and I'm just so glad I made it.
No doubt. How was it over there? What was some of the culture differences? What was the locker room like? How was your experience in DDT?
One of the really cool things about DDT is like, for when they bring the foreigners over, typically your first show is in Korakuen Hall,
Ooh.
which was like, one of the bucket list places that I wanted to wrestle. So it was really cool being there. And what I learned about the Japanese fans, or at least the DDT fans, I can't speak for every promotion. Uh, my first night there, because they know I'm a foreign wrestler and they know that like wrestlers kind of depend on their merch money, on top of just being like diehard fans, they'll completely buy your merch table out the first night
Really?
because they want to support you. Yeah, it's a cultural thing. And to me, the absolute best part about being in Japan was the Japanese wrestling fans and the Japanese wrestlers and just the wrestling culture. Because all the wrestlers treated me so well too. Like I said, Shigehiro Irie got me over there, and he's one of the kindest human beings that I know. So he was always like super cool and like looking out for me in the locker room. And then I met another guy over there, Antonio Honda, who speaks perfect English. And so me, and he's into like the esoteric spiritual stuff that I'm into.
Okay.
So we really hit it off, and like he'll be like my friend for life now.
Nice. That's so cool, man. That's really cool. How about earlier you had mentioned your dream was to go to Japan. You love the Indies. I totally get it. I'm right there with you. I understand that. You said you didn't want to be a corporate guy. Well, one day you found yourself in a WWE locker room. What can you tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly about that experience?
Yeah, I'll say that like just because that wasn't my goal doesn't mean that I wouldn't take a contract in the heartbeat.
Right
Because
on.
I for sure would. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider it selling out because like uh it's not something that goes against my ethics. It just wasn't my goal.
Right on.
And it was a really good experience, like a good and bad experience, because like this is right when I shaved my head and my beard just on a whim
Oh, okay.
because I'm also a wild person. So like I've been doing Evolve for like almost 2 years at that point, and this is like also right before I went to DDT. So maybe not even 2 years, like a year and some change. And so like the people from WWE had my old pictures, so I surprised them also because I didn't. When I shaved all my shit off, I didn't know that I had that opportunity on the horizon,
Mm.
and I don't know if that hurt me or not. Uh, but it was a cool experience. I did NXT's North American Title tournament at WrestleMania Access,
Mm-hmm.
so you had a lot of really cool like diehard fans there, and like it was cool to get a response there because you got like the people that are like diehard wrestling fans and indie fans are going to be at the NXT shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a pretty good match with Fabian Eichner, but it wasn't like my best match by any means. And it was a little bit disappointing to me also because as far as the Evolve guys go, that night it was just me and Keith Lee,
Mm.
and Keith Lee wrestled Chris Hero that day.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And the match with Fabian Eichner, like, it was good, and he's really fucking good, obviously, because he's there. But, like, I have such great chemistry with Chris Hero because I've wrestled him a whole bunch of times, and, like, he was one of the guys that I studied coming up, and, like, it would have been so cool to have that match there,
Right.
but it just didn't work out. But
Still
also,
though.
like, shout out to the WWE, the food in the back. What do you call it when you
Catering.
catering? Yeah, because like they've got everything perfectly labeled, so I could like fill my belly with all the vegan food.
Oh,
Play
okay.
that for them.
How cool. Oh man, but still, you worked NXT during Mania weekend when NXT is its most NXT, and and again, that was a cool moment. I live vicariously through you, in case you didn't know. That was a cool moment for me to see West Virginia, Fairmont, West Virginia, Jason Kincaid, right there at WrestleMania weekend. That was props to you, man. That was cool. I did not know about Chris Hero. That's insane. You just keep blowing my mind. What can you tell me about working Chris Hero?
Man, I think the first time I wrestled him, yeah, for sure, the first time I wrestled him was in West Virginia,
Mm.
and it was really cool because like I'm just a local guy. He doesn't know anything about me,
Mm-hmm.
but because like old school Chris Hero was like super technical also. Like he started he was still always going to be technical the same way that like even when I do the flying shit, I'm technical,
Mm-hmm.
but he went more strike based with it. Uh but like we clicked immediately. Like despite the fact that I was just some random guy that he didn't have to like have the level of match that he did with me,
Right.
like the fact that we immediately like had chemistry even like just talking to each other in the locker room. He worked his ass off with me, and like it was one of those matches too. Like I wrestled AJ Styles early on, and that meant a lot to me because it was like one of the first times that the local wrestlers started looking at me like, oh, like he can go with AJ, like he could go places.
Right
And I
on.
felt like it was the same thing with Chris Hero. because this was like, Ring of Honor, like really like pushing Chris Hero, like great shape, like right before he got signed to WWE the first time.
Okay.
And I felt like that was one of those matches that was like, oh yeah, Jason's not just a good like local wrestler, like he can go with the guys that are at the highest level.
Yeah.
And then I got to wrestle him a lot of other places, and actually like one of the reasons I think that like I ended up getting signed to Evolve was because Chris Hero told Gabe Sapolsky, hey, watch that kid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good looks, Chris Hero. Evolve, man. I watched Evolve just because you was on it, man. Like, I'd fallen out for, like, probably a month. I didn't watch Evolve. And I was like, fuck, Jason Kincaid's on it. I gotta start watching again. What can you tell me about the Evolve days?
Yeah, Evolve was cool because, like, it was NXT's NXT.
Yep.
Like, I think everybody kind of recognizes that now. So, like, that's also how I got that shot. And it was kind of at that point before me and Darby got there. It was like the wrestlers promotion,
Okay.
where like almost everybody was like a pure wrestler kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you remember, even the early ones, they were still doing like people's record and stuff like that.
Yep.
But like me and Darby kind of changed the culture just slightly because we were gimmicky a little bit
Definitely.
and stood apart, and like also like crazy kids,
No doubt.
But Evolve was really fun, and like I've met some of my favorite wrestlers that I've been in the locker room through Evolve. But also it was like another culture shift for me too, because like I do feel like there is at that level where everybody's trying to like their hardest to get signed, there is a drop in camaraderie.
Okay.
Where like everybody's so focused on themselves because like they're really those successful minded people, and like that's why they're like everybody that I worked with there had, like for the most part has went on to do really like rad stuff because they're so like driven in that way. It's not as relaxed as like a West Virginia indie wrestling locker room where everybody's bullshitting and like we're having the time of our lives because like it's okay if we go fuck up.
Right on. That's interesting. That's really interesting. A little bit more silent backstage. Like you said, not necessarily the guys are dicks, but they're so close. That there's a reason they're there. That's cool. That's a nice little contrast.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people in headphones, like hyper focused, like getting themselves in the zone before their matches, as opposed to like if you've been around, you've seen like me and Benny Conley just been like complete assholes.
Exactly. Yeah, having fun.
Just like trying to pop each other at the curtain before we go out there, because like to me it always has been more about the journey than the destination, and I'm glad that I got to do ROH, and I'm glad I got to go to Japan and Mexico and Canada, and like hopefully I'll still do more international tours. Like I would love to go to Europe. But like all the stuff in between those destinations, even that I've already done, has been the raddest stuff. I remember listening to CM Punk's interview when he had first got released from the WWE, and like people talk about how bitter he was in it, but what I got out of it more than that stuff was how like much he would brighten up when he would talk about his indie days and how much fun that he had in the car with Colt Cabana and Chris Hero and those guys when they were traveling and broke. And like to me, I just like the fact that I'm still able to do that. Like I'm still out here like having a blast in cars, having crazy adventures, and like whether or not like I quit wrestling tomorrow or if I wrestle another 10 years, like I've got 20 years of road stories and adventures that like I wouldn't trade for anything.
Exactly. Yeah, it's priceless. I definitely understand what you're saying. Jason Kincaid, of all people, give me some random Jason Kincaid adventures, some road stories, just random shit you've done on the road in 20 years. I imagine you got some wild shit you can throw at me.
Yeah, so like one of the reasons why I don't drink in public as much anymore is like I had a real bad habit for a little while of getting drunk and slapping dudes that were disrespectful
Oh, yeah?
in one way or another. Yeah, so a lot of stuff like that. Like there was one time I was at WrestleCade, and my like people will know this name now because like he's like on the rise as one of the top indie stars. Axton Ray
Okay, yeah.
was still a teenager then. I think he was 18, but he might have even still been 17.
Uh oh.
And he's just hanging out like while we're all drinking. Been a good little boy. He's not getting drunk, but I am. I'm getting real drunk. And one of the guys there, his name is Chase. Shout out Chase. He starts disrespecting Axton. And one of the guys that's like helping been a vendor at WrestleCade, he's my buddy Lou. And Lou is like an uncle to Axton, so he's getting mad. And so like I'm getting mad because Lou's getting mad, and I can tell that it's bothering Axton. And like if I let stuff like that fester, it really drives me crazy. So I'm just like on some like you need to shut the fuck up stuff at first. But like that dude ended up leaving, Chase ends up leaving. We all like go our separate ways. I'm at Mellow Mushroom, and there's a table of wrestlers, and I've already been drinking, so I'm a lot more sociable than I normally am. So I just sat down with these wrestlers, and as we're bullshitting, that Chase guy, he comes and he sets his pitcher of beer down beside me so he can talk to the other wrestlers. And I just grab his pitcher of beer and I chug the whole thing in front of him. Set it back down. And like my buddy Trey from the Washington Bullets, he was like, "Fuck, Kincaid, I didn't know you were so gangster." And so like more like bullshitting and like everybody's drunk at WrestleCade and like we're all partying and having a good time happens. And then like this dude's also getting more drunk as the night's going on after already been disrespectful earlier in the night. And we're all back at the same place that we were originally at, and he's talking shit and leaves. And my buddy Lou's getting like, he's like, "Man, I wish somebody just smack him." And I was like, "He's up in the hotel room that you paid for, right? You've got a key, right?"
Oh, okay.
He's like, "Yeah, of course." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to go up and smack him." So, me and Axton, teenage Axton, we go up the elevator. We get off on the floor. Axton opens up the door because I'm wildly drunk. As we're opening the door, I hear from inside, like, his wife is in there. And she's like, "Why did you tell all them about my pussy ring?"
What the fuck?
And so we open the door as soon as she says pussy rings. So I'm like, "Yeah, why did you tell about her pussy ring, bro? That's fucked." And she was like, "Oh my God, you heard that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I heard about your pussy ring. I mean, just now. I didn't know about it before. But you know what? He's been disrespectful all night." And so I slapped the shit out of him. And she goes, "What the fuck?" And like, I square up like we're going to fight. And he's like, "Man, that's fucked up." And just leaves his own hotel room.
Oh, fuck. Wow.
And I kept drinking that night.
Okay.
The point where like, I think somebody else, like I given like somebody else my hotel room or something, because I ended up in a hotel room with other wrestlers. Like one of them was Jamie Senegal, and like another female wrestler, because like one of my buddies had brought them in as like a vendor for WrestleCade,
Mm-hmm.
and I puked all over somebody else's hotel room.
Oh shit.
And the next day, like those female wrestlers had to deal with like me puking in the middle of the night, and like I felt way more bad about that than I did about smacking him. But one of like now when I'm on the road, I always tell my wrestler buddies like I've got a 3-drink minimum or
Mm-hmm.
maximum. Yeah, a 3-drink maximum,
Uh-huh.
because they can talk me into 4 drinks and feel like they did something. Because I have a lot of stories that are like that.
You're such an enigma, man. You are the sweetest dude and the most gangster dude. It's wild to me, and that's why I want to get over to people. Like, watch his stuff, man. You can watch an old Jason Kincaid match and see his gangster. I guess it's always there. Or you can watch something in VCW, like you and Benny Conley having fun out there. You're an enigma to me, man. I think you need your own fucking podcast. I'm sure you have plenty to tell. I tell you what, since we just showed how gangster you are, let's get a little sentimental. Tell me about meeting Sleazy Breeze, how this relationship came about. I think it definitely adds a whole new element as far as the entrance, everything. What can you tell me about this guy?
So my man Sleazy he is a guy that's been in a wheelchair since he was a little kid. Like, uh, I first met him through another wrestler using him as a manager,
Oh, okay.
because he first went to Jimmy Wayne Yang School in Cincinnati and learned how to be a wrestling manager. And like the wrestler that he was managing all the time ended up like not wrestling as much.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just at like it was an RSW show in Cleveland actually, because I wrestled Space Monkey at that show.
Nice.
Who was like another shout out to DDT Wrestling for like first putting me in the ring with Space Monkey, because I fucking love that guy.
No doubt. I have footage of you and Space Monkey on a hard drive and didn't know it. Tim? Damn it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And in that match, like people like if you know me from Instagram, you mostly only know that like I do hyper technical stuff with like some lucha libre mixed in with it. But I'm also like a wild brawler guy. Randomly, a lot of times, like the middle of the match will be me just like picking stuff out of the crowd and doing like weird kung fu moves with it.
Right.
And Sleazy just happened to be in the crowd at that RSW show, because I think maybe he had rode up with DeGette Bundles or something. I feel like DeGette might have been on that show,
Okay.
but he wasn't even managing. But like me and Space Monkey brawled over the guardrail into the crowd, and he was just there. And I whispered into his ear like, "Hey man, is it cool if I run over Space Monkey with you?" And he was like, "Hell yeah."
Hell yeah.
And like I took off running as fast as I could, because he was in like a traditional like old push wheelchair, and like not his electric one that he has now.
Okay.
And like I full sprint and like roll in that Space Monkey, and he hits Space Monkey so hard and just keeps going until he hits the guardrail. And then afterwards I was like, "Hey man, I thought you were going to stop when you hit Space Monkey. I didn't realize I was going to put you into the guardrail. I'm real sorry about that."
Uh-huh.
And he's like, "Nah, bro, I fucking loved it." And I'm like, "I love this guy."
Right.
And I can't remember actually like if he first asked me if he could manage me or if like I asked him, but like he started doing some local shows with me after that, and like we just kept it going to where like now he travels all over with me, like all the way down to Georgia, like uh all the way up into the East Coast and stuff. He's managed me.
Nice. And like I say, it adds such a whole new element. It's awesome. It's awesome. I'll go ahead and give a little promo right now. Coming soon, I promise you, very soon. We're gonna have Sleazy on the show. We'll get his side of the story. It is. It adds a whole new element. I love it. We're in the final 5 minutes, Jason Gift Kincaid. I can't thank you enough. At this time anything you want to sell, put over, whatever's coming down the road for Jason Kincaid, merch, socials, I don't give a shit, man. The floor is yours. Have at it.
Yeah, I don't have like a lot of designs up, but you can definitely like order a t-shirt from Pro Wrestling Tees from me. I'm at Gift Kincaid on Instagram. I deleted my Twitter recently because fuck Elon Musk.
Oh.
You can find me on Facebook. If you're a female that's between the ages of like 25 and 40, you can add me on Snapchat. Also at Gift Kincaid on there. But that's about it. Like, come out to a local independent wrestling show, whether I'm on it or not, and enjoy rad indie wrestling.
This is why we love it, man. This is why I love it. Folks like Jason Gift Kincaid. I hope to get you back on here. I'm sure there's miles and miles upon stories we can get out of you, man. What a day.
Hell. Yeah, we should get me and Benny Conley on here at the same time also.
Well, consider it done. Whenever it's good
Yeah.
for the both of you, I'll make the time. That sounds awesome. What can
We're
you
a
tell
bunch
me
of
about
silly
Benny
kids.
before you go?
Yeah, so I originally reached out to Benny Conley because like he was wrestling at like 14 years old.
Yeah.
And I remember my brother was in art class with Benny because like I'm about like 7 years older than my brother and Benny. And my brother came up to me and he's like, there's some kid in my art class that said he wrestles with you. And I'm like, I don't know. What's his name? He's like, Benny Conley. And so I looked him up on MySpace. This is how long this is ago. And I was like, I know who that guy is. He doesn't wrestle with me. But then I got to thinking about it, and like the area that I'm from, Oak Hill, West Virginia, has like put out some of the best wrestlers in West Virginia, like the Cuban Assassin, despite the controversies, Brian Logan. And in my own head, like, okay, I'm carrying on that tradition. If there's a guy from my hometown, if he's going to be wrestling, I got to take the motherfucker under my wing. And so I originally messaged him out of the blue and was like, hey, man, I was wrestling for a different promotion. And you know how indie wrestling heat is. At the time, these two promotions, the one I worked for and the one that he worked for, were feuding. And so I was like, hey, man, you want to come to this show and train with me? You can. And he's like, hell yeah, I will. But then the guys that he was around at the time talked him out of it because they said that I was going to beat him up. And so I didn't talk to Benny after that for like a couple years until this is aggressively West Virginian. We made a town together from Oak Hill in the back of a pickup truck in the middle of summer, and it was so fucking hot.
Oh, wow.
And it was like me and my original trainer, Scotty McKeever, and a guy named Hojo and Benny Conley. And like we made friends that day at a bot show at Concord University. And we've been friends ever since. And like to this day, he'll be like, yeah, I should have came and trained with you instead of listening to those fucks.
he's told me the same thing. So good.
But yeah, Benny's not only one of my like wrestling buddies, he's one of my best friends in the whole world. Fucking love him.
Damn good dude. You should be proud of him. He's shining. He's shining just the same, man.
Yeah, like a show not too long ago, I remember like probably last year, maybe like beginning of last year, I was just sitting in the like merch area watching him wrestle a wrestler in their second match. And I know how good Benny is because I'm the guy that always politics to wrestle Benny.
Right on.
Everywhere we go. And shout out to Tim Cross who like talk shit about that. But I know I can have a good match with Benny. So I'm gonna keep politicking to have that match with him. So I already know how good Benny is. But like I said, this is this guy's second match. And I'm sitting at the merch table area and I'm watching him tear the fucking house down with them. And it just clicked in my head, like, not only is Benny really good and can have great matches with guys like me and Dylan McQueen and like all the good wrestlers, but he's at that level of the guys that I was coming up with and learned from where they took me to the next level. I'm watching him do that in real time. take a guy that's not ready to have that level of match that he was having and have it with him and like have the crowd not realize that this guy hasn't been wrestling for 10 years. Shit is sick.
Good. Yep. I know what you're saying. So good. I cannot thank you enough for the interview. I'm saying it right now. My favorite interview to date. That's good stuff. We can't wait to get you back on, man. Like I say, I'll give you your own podcast right now. Anyway, it's been a good day, Jason Kincaid. We found out woke up, found out we was a monetized channel on YouTube. We wrapped it up with Jason the Gift Kincaid. I can't thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Spooky Lou.
Can't wait to see you soon, sir. I'll ask you to
I'll ask you to hang on the.
I'll hang on
the line
on
here with
give
me. I'll
feedback
give
when I'm trying to
feedback when
wrap
I'm
up the show. What a day. That's how we live. Aggressively West Virginian, right?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Treat each other fairly with kindness and respect. Go out there and live your dreams. You might wake up monetized. You might wake up in Japan. You might wake up aggressively West Virginia and be some sort of submission wizard. You never know. Right?
Right. You might wake up in my area and wake up demonetized.
Fair enough. It was fucking worth it. I don't care. Hell yeah. We love y'all. We'll see you next go round.